March 14, 1943. North Atlantic, 300 miles west of Ireland. The steel hull of U-boat U-221 creaks as it slips beneath the surface, ballast tanks flooding with a low, ominous groan. Inside the pressure hull, the air turns damp and sour almost instantly. Diesel fumes, sweat, unwashed wool. Oberleutnant Zur C. Karl-Heinz Bauer, 27 years old and already on his fourth patrol, grips the ladder rail as the boat settles at 90 meters. Then it happens. Ping. A sharp, metallic note slices through the boat. It is not loud, but it is precise. Too precise. Every man freezes. Ping, ping. The sound travels through steel, through bone. In the cramped control room, sailors exchange glances. They try to keep neutral. Bauer doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Every man aboard knows what that sound means, even if few will say it out loud. Active sonar. Until recently, the deep had been a refuge. Submerging meant vanishing. In 1940 and 1941, U-boats ruled these waters like ghosts, slipping under convoys, attacking at will, then disappearing into blackness. The ocean was vast. Escorts were blind. Sound detection was crude, unreliable, easily tricked. But this is different. The ping comes again, slightly faster now. In the forward hydrophone room, Matrosenjefrater Ernst Weber leans over his headphones, face pale. He adjusts a dial with trembling fingers. "Contact bearing starboard," he whispers. "Consistent." Bauer steps closer. "Range." Weber hesitates. That pause is everything. Closing, Herr Oberleutnant. The boat is silent now. No engines, no pumps, only the faint hum of batteries and the creak of metal under pressure. Bauer signals for silent running. Boots lift carefully. Tools are secured. Even breathing seems too loud. Above them, unseen, an Allied escort ship cuts through the waves, a Royal Navy destroyer, part of a convoy screen protecting dozens of merchant ships. On its bridge, a young British officer watches a glowing green display inside a small, darkened room. The device is new, deadly, reliable. ASDIC, the British term for active sonar. A trained operator sends out pulses of sound into the ocean, then listens as they bounce back. Steel reflects sound beautifully. A submarine hull returns a clear echo, a fingerprint in water. Ping. Inside U-221, Bauer's jaw tightens. He has heard this sound before, but never like this. Not so steady. Not so confident. "Depth, 120 meters, he orders. The dive planes tilt. The boat sinks further into the dark. At this depth, the pressure presses like a giant hand around the hull. Rivets groan. A thin trickle of seawater leaks through a valve gasket, dripping rhythmically onto the deck. Ping, ping. It follows them down. This is the moment Bauer understands something fundamental has changed. In the past, escorts guessed. They dropped depth charges where they thought a U-boat might be. Now, the enemy does not guess. He listens. He measures. He tracks. In the engine room, Chief Petty Officer Wilhelm Kruger wipes sweat from his neck. He has served in submarines since before the war. He survived patrols in the Bay of Biscay, through storms and air attacks. He mutters quietly, so only the man beside him hears. They can hear us like church bells. The sonar pulses accelerate. The distance between pings shortens. Ping, ping, ping. Above, the destroyer turns slightly, a small course correction. Below, Bauer feels it without seeing it. He has learned to sense pursuit the way a hunted animal does. "Hard to port," Bauer orders softly. 5 degrees. The helmsman complies. The boat turns, slow and careful, trying to slip out of the sonar cone. In earlier years, this might have worked. Subtle maneuvers could confuse the echo, make the operator lose contact. But the pings do not stop. They adjust. They follow. Weber swallows hard. They are compensating. Bauer closes his eyes for a fraction of a second. Just long enough to remember what instructors once promised at Kiel. A submerged U-boat is invisible. That promise is dead now. The first depth charge detonates far off the port bow, a dull, distant thud, like a giant slamming a door underwater. The shockwave rattles light fixtures. Dust drifts down from the overhead. Another explosion, closer this time. Men brace instinctively, hands gripping pipes and rails. The hull shudders but holds. For now. Bauer opens his eyes. His voice is calm, controlled, but inside something cold settles into his stomach. They are no longer hiding in the deep. They are being hunted. March 14, 1943. North Atlantic. Same waters, shrinking fast. The second pattern of depth charges falls closer. WHUMP, WHUMP, WHUMP. The sound is not an explosion so much as a crushing impact, a rolling pressure that squeezes the air from lungs and forces teeth together. Light bulbs shatter. A gauge needle snaps and spins uselessly. Damage report. Bauer calls. Minor leaks forward. Gyro still operational. Batteries holding. Each answer is a small mercy, but Bauer knows mercy is temporary. He listens again. Ping. Now it comes from directly overhead. The destroyer has them centered. Above the waves, HMS Vetch, a Flower-class corvette, rides low in the cold Atlantic swell. Her deck is slick with spray and oil. On the bridge, Lieutenant James Holloway, Royal Navy Reserve, leans over the voice pipe. ASDIC contact holding steady, the operator reports from below. Range decreasing, depth estimate 130 meters. Holloway exhales slowly. This is not guesswork anymore. It feels almost surgical. Very well, he says. Pattern Charlie, keep her boxed. Below decks, the sonar operator sends another pulse. The echo returns clean and sharp, a steel cylinder moving slowly, desperately beneath them. In 1943, this is how the war at sea has changed. The British, Canadians, and Americans have learned to fight submarines not with luck, but with systems. Sonar to find them, radar to spot them on the surface, radio intelligence to anticipate their movements. For the first time, the ocean is starting to belong to the escorts. Back inside U-221, Bauer orders a slight change in depth, 140 meters. It is close to the boat's tested limit. Any deeper, and the hull risks permanent deformation. A sailor in the bow compartment begins whispering a prayer. Another tightens a lucky charm around his wrist, a scrap of ribbon from his wife's dress. Ping. Closer. New technique, Weber murmurs, his voice hollow. They're holding contact through turns. Bauer knows what that means. The escorts are no longer charging past blindly, losing the submarine as they race overhead. They are slowing down, maintaining sonar lock, attacking methodically. The first depth charge of the next pattern detonates almost directly above the conning tower. The lights go out. Darkness swallows the boat. Men cry out. Someone falls hard into a bulkhead. Emergency lamps flicker on, dim, yellow, barely enough to see faces twisted with fear. Water sprays from a fractured pipe. The boat tilts sharply starboard. Trim tanks. Bauer shouts. Now. Compressed air hisses. The boat rights itself, but the silence afterward is worse than the noise. Every man waits, counting heartbeats. Then the unmistakable sound of metal tearing somewhere aft. Leak in the stern compartment, a voice yells. Small but increasing. Kruger races aft, boots splashing through rising water. He jams rags and wooden wedges into a seam where the hull has flexed inward. The pressure at this depth is relentless. The sea wants inside. Bauer calculates rapidly. Batteries are draining. They cannot run submerged forever. If they surface, radar-equipped escorts will see them instantly. If they stay down, Sonar will keep them trapped. There is no good choice left. Ping. Again. Captain, Weber says quietly. They're circling, waiting us out. That is when Bauer realizes the most terrifying truth of all. The enemy is no longer in a hurry. Earlier in the war, escorts attacked fast, aggressively, often breaking off too soon to stay with convoys. Now they have endurance, coordination, confidence. Time itself has turned against the U-boat. Another explosion erupts nearby, closer than any before. The hull groans like a wounded animal. A rivet pops loose, ricocheting across the control room like a bullet. A young sailor screams, then clamps his mouth shut, eyes wide with shame and terror. Bauer grips the periscope housing, knuckles white. He thinks of the BDU back in Germany, the optimistic radio messages, the promises that new tactics would restore the balance. But down here in the dark there is no balance. Only pursuit. The sonar pings continue, steady and merciless, each one saying the same thing. We hear you. We see you. You cannot hide. Bauer gives the next order softly, almost to himself. Prepare for evasive measures. No one asks what he means. Everyone aboard understands that this hunt is entering its final phase. March 14, 1943. North Atlantic. Late afternoon. The air inside U-221 grows thick, almost chewable. Carbon dioxide levels creep upward, bringing headaches and a creeping sense of panic. Bauer can feel it pressing behind his eyes, a dull fog threatening clear thought. Rig for emergency maneuver, he orders. This is the last card left to play. Kruger signals the engine room. One electric motor spins up, briefly, violently. The boat lurches forward, changing speed and depth in a sudden, desperate gamble. In earlier years, this kind of burst might have broken contact, confusing sonar operators accustomed to slow, predictable movement. But above them, the escort commander is ready. On HMS Vetch, Holloway watches the sonar trace wobble, then stabilize. They've increased speed, the operator reports. Still have him. Holloway nods grimly. He's running out of air. He gives the next order without triumph, without anger. Just procedure. Bring us around. Hedgehog, stand by. The Hedgehog is a new weapon, a spigot mortar mounted on the forecastle, firing a fan of small bombs ahead of the ship. Unlike depth charges, they only explode on contact. No explosion means a miss. An explosion means a hit. Below, Bauer feels the change in the ship's motion above them, the subtle shift in pressure waves, the unnatural quiet that precedes something new. Then it happens. A series of sharp metallic impacts echo through the water, not explosions, but something striking the hull. Thunk, thunk, thunk. A half-second of silence. Then one detonates. The blast is violent and localized. The forward compartment erupts in sparks and smoke. A man is thrown backward, his helmet crushed against a bulkhead. The boat shudders hard enough to knock Bauer off his feet. Hit forward. Flooding. Sonar room compromised. Weber collapses beside his station, blood streaming from his scalp. He does not get up. Kruger's voice crackles over the intercom from the stern. We're losing buoyancy. Pumps can't keep up. Bauer scrambles back to his feet. Training takes over now, pushing fear aside. Blow forward ballast, full. Compressed air roars. The bow rises slightly, but not enough. The water keeps coming. Another Hedgehog round detonates, closer to the keel. The lights go out again, this time for good. Darkness. Shouting. The sickening sound of rushing water. Somewhere in the chaos, a torpedo breaks free from its rack and slams into the hull, denting steel but holding. Men shove against it, securing it with trembling hands. The boat begins to angle upward, not from control but from imbalance. Bauer knows the truth before anyone says it. They are going up. Surface alarm, he orders. The klaxon wails, a sound no submariner wants to hear in daylight under escort. Men scramble, sealing hatches, climbing ladders. Cruiser slams valves shut, buying seconds. Seconds are all they have. Above, Holloway sees the sonar trace rise rapidly. "He's coming up," the operator says. "Action stations," Holloway replies. "All guns ready." The sea erupts as U-221 bursts through the surface, diesel exhaust belching, deck awash. The conning tower hatch flies open. Bower emerges into freezing air and gunfire. Tracer rounds slash across the water. A sailor collapses instantly, thrown backward into the hatch. Bower ducks, shouts orders that vanish in the roar of engines and guns. There is no chance to fight. No chance to dive again. The destroyer is already turning, lining up for a ramming run if needed. Bower looks around, at his boat battered and bleeding oil, at his crew exhausted, wounded, terrified, at the gray Atlantic stretching endlessly in every direction. He raises his arm. Abandon ship. Some men hesitate, trained to scuttle to destroy secrets. But this is 1943, and survival has become its own victory. Explosive charges are set. Documents are thrown overboard. One last glance at the boat that carried them through the deep. Then the charges blow. U-221 shudders and begins to sink, stern first, back into the dark that no longer hides anything. As Bower hits the water, the cold steals his breath. He watches the bubbles rise, marking the grave of his command. Above him, the escorts slow. The hunt is over. But across the Atlantic, hundreds more sonar sets are already listening, turning the deep into a place where silence is no longer safety. March 14, 1943. North Atlantic. Dusk. Karl-Heinz Bower floats in the oil-slicked water, lungs burning, fingers numb within seconds. Around him, wreckage bobs to the surface. Splintered wood, a shattered life ring, a helmet slowly filling with water. Men shout, cough, cry out names that will not be answered. A line is thrown from HMS Vetch. Hands, British hands, haul Bower up the scrambling net. No blows. No curses. Only the efficient movements of sailors who have done this before. On deck, Bower collapses, shivering violently. A blanket is thrown over his shoulders. A mug of tea is pressed into his hands by a young seaman who avoids eye contact, as if embarrassed by the intimacy of it. Below deck, the escort crew begins the ritual, marking coordinates, logging time, confirming the kill. One more U-boat gone. Holloway watches Bower from the bridge wing. He feels no triumph, only a strange, hollow relief. For months now, this has been the rhythm of the war at sea: locate, track, destroy. The faces change. The procedure does not. As darkness settles, HMS Vetch rejoins her convoy. Merchant ships plow onward, their holds filled with fuel, ammunition, food, the lifeblood of a war that will be decided not by a single battle, but by whether these ships keep moving. Bower sits below, wrapped in wool, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of a surface ship. The Atlantic no longer presses against steel, but the weight inside his chest feels heavier than any depth. He replays the sounds in his mind. The pings. The steady, patient rhythm of them. During interrogations days later, Bower will be asked about tactics, about morale, about whether the U-boat arm still believes in victory. He will answer carefully, guardedly, but one thought will not leave him. The sea has ears now. In prisoner camps across Britain and Canada, this realization spreads quietly among captured submariners. Patrols that once returned with kills now vanish without radio calls. Boats that dive never come back up. Back in Germany, Gross-Admiral Karl Dönitz reads loss reports with mounting dread. March 1943 becomes known as the Black Month for the U-boat arm. The numbers are undeniable. Crews are dying faster than they can be trained. New boats enter service already obsolete. All because of sound. All because the Allies learned how to listen. Sonar is only part of it. Radar aircraft sweeping the Bay of Biscay, HF/DF radio direction finding, long-range patrol planes closing the mid-Atlantic gap. But sonar is the heartbeat of it all. The one thing a submerged boat cannot outrun. The ocean itself has been weaponized. For the men who once believed in invisibility, this is a psychological death as much as a physical one. Every creak becomes a betrayal. Every movement risks detection. Sleep comes only in fragments, haunted by imagined pings. Bauer will survive the war. He will return home thinner, quieter, a man who still wakes at night hearing echoes that no longer exist. He will never command another submarine. Years later, when asked what changed the war beneath the waves, he will not mention technology by name. He will say this instead: "We were taught that if we went deep enough, the world would forget us. In 1943, the world learned how to follow us there." The Atlantic closes over the wreck of U-221, already rusting, already becoming part of the seabed. Fish move through the broken hull. The pings are gone. But the lesson remains. The deep is no longer silent.